So I'm going to turn it over to Mallory, and she will walk us through the changes to the manual.
Thanks, Aaliyah. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this morning. We'll just get going on the slide deck here. So as Aaliyah mentioned, what we're looking to do today is share the changes to the new small group learning session model. It's an opportunity to ask questions and to discuss, and we're also looking to get your feedback and any ideas. We had the opportunity last week to get some feedback from a small group of coordinators, so we really appreciate your time and your thoughts, and we've been able to integrate a lot of those ideas into the manual already. But if there's anything you see here today that needs to be clarified or amended, please do let us know. Please note that we also are considering this still a draft. Once we've integrated your feedback, we'll be doing another round of formatting on the PDF that was sent around. So it will have the links to the live document so that it will be even easier to navigate in the way that the prior manual was pretty easy to navigate. So we'll go through the manual together, but because it is quite a few pages and there's lots of new information, we wanted to highlight the core changes right up front. So we'll get into the details as we go through the manual, but we'll go through the big changes right away. So Aaliyah's already alluded to some of these. Thanks for that great intro. So the first big change is just how the topics were selected. So in response to the drive towards this integrated system of care via the patient medical home, GPSC has directed that the topics for the small group learning sessions will support physicians in transitioning to and thriving within this new model. So the topics going forward will be linked to the attributes of the patient medical home. And as Aaliyah mentioned, we've transitioned to providing provincial content that's developed in partnership with educational partners and adapted with our clinical advisors here. The other key shift here is around the compensation. So this is consistent with the updated compensation policy of the program. The sessional payment is available for completion of the action plan, not just for attending a session. Another change here that we'll get into a bit later on is smaller group size, and this is to facilitate learning and, again, to adhere to the college's requirements about the small group learning sessions. And the other new bit, we're offering an integrated learning package. So this is an option to support the really keen physicians. They're wanting to allow those who want to do more with session learning to do so and to have some protected, compensated time to do that, but at the same time not demand too much from everyone else. So we've created a new option for ongoing learning that's distinct from the action plan. And again, we'll get on to a little more detail on all of this later on. So the core objective here has stayed the same. It's the core point of the small group learning sessions is solution-focused discovery. So the sessions are intended to allow participants to learn from and with their peers, plan for practice changes based on the session content, and have the opportunity to talk about how to embed improvements into their practice and start to test out the session content in a practice environment. So what does this look like? The topics may be delivered either in a series or they may be individual. It'll depend just on the content. The number of sessions in the series may be determined by the content or by the feedback gathered as the sessions roll out. So we have the intention for the content of some sessions to be responsive to on-the-ground needs, which is great. So series of different topics may be completed independent of each other, so there's no prerequisite for a series. For example, you don't have to do QI before you do a session on team-based care. That's just dependent on what the physician is looking for. Dependent on the content, there may be either a prescribed flow for a series, so 1, 2, 3, or there could be a 1 or 2 required foundational sessions, sessions, or it may be purely choose your own adventure, so pick and choose which the order that you'd like to do a session in. For those sessions that are structured in an ordered series, so 1, 2, 3, we do suggest that the second session be completed within 4 months, and the goal there is to ensure that the learnings from the first session are able to be carried on to the subsequent session. So moving on to the development process, which Aaliyah talked about a little bit as well. So the content at this point is sourced, developed, and adapted with educational partners. A lot of the adaptation is done with our clinical advisors to meet the program needs and the delivery needs. And we're seeking feedback on the session content from RSTs throughout the process. And there's a visual in the manual as well. So moving on to talk about delivery. The delivery details will be determined regionally by the GP champs and coordinators, and you can tailor your delivery approach based on your session participants. And the regional teams will be asked to identify GP champs who can lead the sessions, and we've just started this process for the QI series. So group size, this is one of the shifts that we mentioned. The College of Family Physicians of Canada defines small group learning as 10 or fewer participants. So as a result, the sessions will preferably be capped at 10 to 12 participants. But since we recognize that the sessions are highly interactive, the cap is intended to allow sufficient, fair, and equal dialogue between the session participants so that there is an effective and really engaging learning environment. And this size is also important to make sure it's actually feasible to provide a lot of support to participants during the session. But given that the sessions are intended to support practices in working towards the attributes of the PMH, we recognize that in some cases there may need to be some fluidity and flexibility with the group size, and that will depend on the needs of the team. So it may be in some situations and with some content that the team may actually have a better learning experience with a larger group so that the full team can be present. So that means there will be a hard cap for group size at 20. So there is some room to balance the spirit of small group learning sessions and the delivery style with the needs of the participants. So in some, that's an ideal cap of about 10 to 12 participants, and depending on the content and the needs of your team, you can go up to 20, but there is a hard cap of 20. So moving right along to action planning. The action planning process seeks to support integrating the learning into a physician's practice. So this will involve using some of the skills and tools learned in the session. And ideally, it will involve the office team as well, whatever size that might be. So the new action plan will be consistent across all the small group learning sessions. It's a standard set of questions that are core to the quality improvement process. And it's included as an appendix in the manual that was just sent out. So completing this is intended to provoke thought and discussion among the team about what they've learned, and it's designed to really meet physicians where they are at so they can complete the action plan based on their current understanding and their comfort level with the concepts addressed. And also, each session will include protected time for participants to start working on the action plan. So they have the opportunity to start talking about it with their peers and get some support while they're still in the session. And additionally, for sessions that are structured in a series, the content of the action plan and what they work through there will be integrated into the following session. So we do ask that participants bring their completed action plans from the previous session to the next session to kind of help support that process. And we talked a little bit about this new option, the integrated learning package. So we wanted to really support the keen physicians that want to take more time with the content and take their learnings a bit further. This gives them some opportunity to work with their team and integrate their learnings after the session and get additional compensation on top of that compensation for the action plan. So completing this integrated learning package, you can get up to 2 hours sessional compensation for the physicians and MOAs that are involved in that process. So again, supporting working within the team. So this package provides a succinct review of some of the core concepts in the session, and it provides some structure for teams to work through these concepts as they relate to their practice and work towards integrating them. So completing this package could be supported through an in-practice visit, or it could potentially be completed independently. And just to note, this integrated learning package is not instead of the action plan. It's an additional piece of work, and it can't be done instead of the action plan. So you need to complete the action plan in order to receive compensation for this integrated learning package. So the implementation period, this is probably going to sound familiar. This is that period of 2 to 8 weeks following the session. Physicians can do the action plan and be compensated for this time. The timeline is intended to ensure that physicians are seeking to integrate their learnings into practice when they're still fresh and accessible. So if they contact an RST to let them know that the implementation timeline is a bit of a challenge, there is flexibility for the RST to work with the physician to figure out what makes the most sense to meet their learning needs. So that might be extending the implementation period, or that might be scheduling an in-practice visit to support them with that. So the timeline here is to facilitate effective ongoing learning. So moving right along here, you want to make sure we've got a lot of time for discussion and questions. Feedback and evaluation. So we are seeking feedback on the content, the delivery, and topics from the regional support team through ongoing discussion, including the Learning Lab today and, for example, the session that we held last week. And feedback regarding the content and delivery will be sought from participants in 3 different ways, so most of this should sound familiar. The pre-session evaluation, the short survey that's completed just prior to the session, and this will help you get a sense of the learning needs of that particular audience. The post-session evaluation completed right at the end of the session, looking to determine the shift in confidence with the learning objectives. And then 8 weeks after the post-activity reflection questionnaire, the Part Q. And this data will be submitted via comment, and it will be used to make changes to the content to identify future education needs and track the impact of session participation. So until comment is fully rolled out, these evaluations should be sent to the provincial office. And these forms will be provided as fillable PDFs. The training for these sessions will occur via WebEx as well, and this will be a walkthrough through the content, and again, opportunities for questions and discussions. And there will be a facilitator's guide for each session that's unique to that session that will be provided to the champs and, of course, the team in advance of that training session. And I should also note that the coordinators that will be supporting each session will be able to sit in on those training sessions as well. So we're going to move into talking about funding and compensation, and Christine is going to walk you through that and give my voice a break and give you guys a break from me. Thanks, Christina.
All right. So consistent with PSP's new compensation policy, sessional payments for these small group learning sessions will be for the completion of the action plan work, and that's going to be that will be triggered by the submission of an action plan. So again, this policy change highlights that compensation in practice support activities is tied to an effort to make improvements in practice rather than purely attending a learning session. So therefore, time for participating in the session itself will not be compensated. The usual policy for expenses associated to the session apply, and there will be updated sessional forms in the back of this SGLS manual. Completion of an integrated learning plan, like Mallory spoke to before, can also be compensated for up to a maximum of 2 hours of sessional payments for both physicians and their MOAs. Mallory touched on this before as well, but certification has been sought for 2 credits per hour for these small group learning sessions. As usual, a submission of a completed post-activity reflective questionnaire by the physician 8 weeks post-session will be the trigger for them to receive their Main Pro Plus certificate. Also, in the same process as everything else, attendance lists for these small group learning sessions are to be sent to PSP Central at psp@doctorsofbc.ca immediately after each session. The RST will provide the physician with their sessional form only after the completion of the action plan, and then the physician will then submit the form directly to PSP Central for payment in the usual manner. So GPSC has allocated a predetermined amount of funding for each division to administer the small group learning sessions for the 2016-17 year. Each division receives the same amount of funding regardless of their size. This funding can be used for space rental, catering, venue parking, audiovisual, printing materials, as well as sessional payments for physician and MOA peer mentors who lead the small group learning sessions. So only the peer mentors' labor costs will come out of this predetermined funding, The participants' money comes out of a separate pot, which we'll go into on the next slide. So
Christina, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if the funding is tied to divisions, so if a physician is not attached to a division, they don't have any access to small group learning session funding, is that correct?
That's a really good question. We have never,
Because I have a large majority of physicians in my community that aren't on a division.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that it's something we haven't come across before because in the past, the small group learning sessions were collaboratively planned with the division, but this is obviously a brave new world we're moving into. So I think we have to take that away and think about how we can accommodate, because absolutely we want to be able to accommodate physicians not in a division. So we'll have to get back with you.
Thank you.
Like, is there a division in the region and they're just not members of the division?
No, like there's certain communities like Dawson Creek, all the physicians there aren't attached to a division. Chetland, like there's a few different communities that aren't attached to a division.
Right.
What we might end up doing is, the same amount of money would be, we'd allow for small group learning sessions to happen, but we'd have to sort of be a miscellaneous pot or something. But yeah, we definitely want to accommodate it. We just need to kind of figure out logistically how that would work.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So stay tuned.
All right. So after a small group learning session, doctors can receive in-practice supports from physician peer mentor, MOA peer mentor, and of course, regional support team members. So the funding for these peer mentoring activities is to come out of the GPSC allocated funds per division. And then again, sessional payments to physicians and other participants of the session is funded outside of the division's total SGLS funding. And it's paid out through the usual sessional form process. Again, those sessional forms will be updated in the back of the manual as well. A small group learning session financial tracker must be completed and submitted to PSP Central at the end of each fiscal year for each division, showing how the money has been allocated. So again, this is going to be included in the appendix of the manual. This tracker has been reviewed by several regional support team members and has been updated since the last rollout of the small group learning sessions, and hopefully is much easier to use this time around. So here's just a slide just better illustrating the different pots of money and what comes out of where. So again, coming out of that allocated money from GPSC is the peer support, including prep time, session time, and expenses, as well as any post-session in-practice support visits, meeting supplies, venue costs, and catering. And then to be paid by PSP Central out of a completely different pot is all participant sessionals and participant expenses. So here's just an image of the updated tracker. Everyone will be able to play around with it in the manual that was sent out earlier this morning. But we tried to make it as straightforward as possible. In the first table, it's to include all peer support expenses. So including sessional time, event lead time, as well as, again, all of the post-session in-practice supports. And then the second table here is for all other non-labor related expenses for the small group learning session. Again, venue, audio visual, catering, printing, parking, as well as facilitator expenses. That is the tracker.
Thanks, Christina. Eileen is away today, so I'm going to run through the certification details real quick. So all sessions will seek certification of 2 credits per hour from the College of Family Physicians of Canada, and this is under the group learning category. Certification has also been sought for up to 4 credits of self-learning for the completion of the integrated learning package. So that's a new shift there. Main Pro Plus certification rules are tighter now than the previous rules around certification. So in order for the certification to be valid, the content delivered must be consistent with the content that's been vetted and certified by the college. So this is the content that's provided by the provincial office. So there's room for variation in delivery of content, but not to amendments of core content or to learning objectives. So this is the last slide before we get to questions. So the last, I think it's the second to last page in the manual, it's intended to be a base checklist for the tasks that are involved with running a small group learning session. We realize that there are additional tasks that may be regionally specific, so this list is just for the stuff that's required from a provincial perspective. So hopefully this is a short enough list that it's easy to integrate into the tasks that you already do. And this is also in alignment with the facilitator's guides that will be released complementary to the content for each session. So we're actually right on time. We've got lots of time for questions. We can pull up the actual manual and we can go back to any slide that we've spoken about today. Anything anyone in the room here would like to add that we've missed?
I was just going to say one thing that we've heard you talk about, or your colleagues have talked about when we've kind of gone over the manual with the smaller group and then also even vetted the actual content is, and it came up I think in the Learning Lab last week as well, is that we were hearing the need for the action plan to be put into some kind of like a triplicate form or some way that some kind of form that's easy for you guys to have one part of it, the doctors to have another part of it. So we are definitely wanting to do that. We just need to maybe spend a little time making sure that the action plan is asking the right questions and is useful to you guys, and then we're going to move forward at Central at getting that done and then making them available to you widely. We think it's a really good idea. What were you saying?
Joan here, I have a question.
Yep.
When will the first content, and two things, I guess. When will you have a list of the approved topics that will be released this year? And then also, when will the actual content be available so that we can start scheduling actual SGLSs?
Okay, so we have shared like a general list of what content is going to be available for the remainder of this fiscal, and that's the quality improvement series that's going to be coming shortly your way, as well as some number of series on team-based care, which we will be able to provide a little bit more details about in the next couple of weeks. And then the third session was the patient self-management topic, and that will also hopefully likely happen before the end of the fiscal as well. But what we can do is maybe put that in writing and share that out with you guys.
Yeah, something that has more specific dates or date ranges would be helpful. Also, I didn't hear exactly when will the first QI stuff be available?
Yeah, so it is ready. We are waiting on the college and some glitches that have happened with their new system around approval for certification. And so once we've been in a lot of conversations back and forth with them, and we're about 2 weeks late on when we expected to hear back and get approval. So we're in a bit of a wait and see, but in the meantime, we're moving forward on, having done this learning lab, as well as you've seen in an email out to the leads, trying to recruit our QI, GP, mentor/champs. And so we'll get them trained up and get ready to go, and then be ready to go live and start scheduling events as soon as the college gives us the go-ahead on the certification.
Okay, so as we're trying to find QI champs, when would the webinar happen? Would it be sort of like before Christmas, or what is your thought?
That's the hope. That's what we're working towards, is to be able to have that webinar before everybody vanishes for the holidays. That's the goal, yeah.
And it will be a sort of train the trainer kind of situation, because it was several of our clinical advisory team members who sort of helped us adapt and adopt the content, and they'll be running the session for their peers.
Okay, and one final question. My understanding was that the one and only residential care SGLS that had been developed followed a fairly attractive SGLS format. I had heard that it might be included as an eligible SGLS, and we're facing some pressure about that particular topic. Is it feasible that it will become approved or available this fiscal, or is it something that would be next fiscal at the earliest?
So, great question, Joan, and so I'll just give a little bit of background for those on the phone. There is floating around out there in really a very good plug-and-play package for a small group learning session on dementia care that was actually developed maybe 6 months or so ago in partnership with UBC. It was PSP Central's sort of first attempt to figure out how to partner with those education organizations who are good at this and sort of capitalize on both of our expertise. And so there's a package that exists out there, and it has been certified, and we do plan to make that available and roll that out in the new year. Similar to what we're doing with this, we'll have to identify some peer champs, train them on the facilitation guide and the slides, and then it will become part of our menu.
So we're thinking the current fiscal or next fiscal for that one?
It'll be in January.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you. Thank you for giving me so much airtime.
No problem. Thanks for the question. And I'm glad you kind of prompted us about the dementia care one, because it also fits in with some larger support around the residential care initiative too, so it's good to come out of the gate with that one as well.
Hi, it's Rob here from Interior. Can I ask a couple quick questions as well?
Please.
Okay, great. First of all, yes, this is a great manual, and I'm looking at page 13. If you want to go to page 13, there's kind of a visual there of all the different steps that are involved. And so just a clarification that these are to be a one-time learning session, right? They're not to be 2 or 3 different learning sessions, like a module. This is just a one-time session?
So that will depend on the content. So for the team-based care, we're looking at having a series, probably almost close to 10 sessions around team-based care. The QI will be smaller, and then there may be other topics like the patient self-management that are just one topic, one session for that topic.
Okay, great. So the team-based care could have up to 10, you said?
Potentially, yeah, depending on the feedback that we get with our educational partner on that one.
Okay, great. I'm wondering if you could, on page 13, or even just somewhere else, and maybe it's in here and I didn't read it yet, so I apologize, but what's the number of hours at each step? So is there an hour available for the pre-session, for the MOA and the doctor? How many hours are the sessions? Are they 3 hours? Are they 1 hour? That kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great idea. We can add that in more clearly on this chart here, but there is the option for a pre-session visit if that's something that's seen as useful by the physician and the RST, and if it's applicable for the content. And then the actual sessions themselves, 2 hours of educational content with the breaks, that'll be 2.5 hours. And then
2.5 hours. Okay.
Yeah, and then 2 hours for completion of the action plan. And then additionally, if the physician and their team is interested, they can have up to 2 additional hours to complete the integrated learning package. But that's optional.
Okay, great. And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that to say for the pre-session visit, it's similar, the way we're looking at it is similar to the modules, that they get 1 hour to sort of, be familiarized with the content. And in particular, I think we're seeing that as an opportunity when we're probably working more in EMR-enabled tools and templates, identifying ahead of time where those things exist or how they might be used to sort of augment the education that they'll receive in the session. So up to 1 hour there, we can make it a little clearer on the form, and then also specify that it's for up to 1 hour of compensation there as well.
Okay, perfect. And then my last question is, who is this targeted at? Is it all GPs and MOAs like a module is, or is it just the groups that are working on the patient medical priority sites or areas, or is it kind of like we want to choose QI-type leaders like just for the patient medical home stuff, or these could be QI-type leaders in the future for other initiatives as well? And is there a process for how we would choose, or any thoughts on how we would choose people? If there's more that want to come than the 5 or 10 that we're saying.
So we're assuming it's for, okay, just to answer the first part of your question, it's for everyone, all GPs who want to learn about quality improvement and team-based care, or, you know, as the other topics roll out. And when or if you run into a time where, you know, you've got such overwhelming demand that you're filling a session, then you can hold a second session in the same region.
Okay, great, thanks.
Can I just wanted to add something onto that too. In terms of sort of thinking about the patient medical homework and the whole integrated system of care push that's happening, the QI is within one of those attributes specified for the patient medical homework. So it fits in as part of that too. So it definitely doesn't have to be targeted to, you know, specific docs or anything like that who are doing that sort of work, but it's understanding QI and all of that is sort of foundational to being able to do a lot of the other work. So it's something that meshes well with the work being done around the patient medical home and everything else too.
Hi, it's Erin. Quick question. The last couple of communications that have gone out have highlighted that feedback will be sought from communities, GPs, et cetera, about topics they would be interested in, and I just wondered what the plan was that for, who's asking the question, when it's being asked, and what the process is going to be, because I know my division is keen to move ahead with topics that they identify are important for their GPs.
Okay, so yeah, good question. You know, I would say there's some processes underway through divisions where we're already through division central office where we're asking those questions and kind of learning about what these hot topics are. And so we're sort of storing them away here. These conversations are also happening via the health authority and the doctors who sit on GPSC and are sort of thinking through that. As far as what you're hearing on the ground and what you're hearing from the doctors, that's we would hope, and we would like you to share that information back with us, and we can then feed that information up to GPSC as they make those decisions.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great.
Oh, hi there. It's Amy here from Vancouver. I'm just tagging on to Erin's question because I'm a little bit unclear of that as well too, is I guess basically who decides what topics are run and at what time. So is it division driven? I know we're working in collaboration with them, but is it going to be division driven or is that still yet to be determined?
So it's very much physician driven in that it's similar to how you make decisions around what modules to run in a particular region, you know, depending on the different tables that the leads or yourselves are sitting at that are planning based on the needs of a division or based on the positions that make up the division. There's going to be eventually a larger menu of small group learning sessions topics available, and then you'd be having those conversations based on, I guess, physician needs and demands. So pretty similar to what you do with the module.
Thank you. So, because what we usually do with the modules as well is we do, you know, collaborate with the divisions on what modules are being run. Mm-hmm. So, for example, so if there's, let's say 20 physicians identified that they want to do A, for example, and we vet it and we speak to the divisions and they say, no, that's not what we want to do, so does it stop there, or how does that work?
I mean, if the topics are not of interest to the divisions from the menu that we have right now, then yeah, we're stuck. But that's why we're also scrambling on our end to make as many small group learning sessions as we can. As quickly as we can, and we admit that it's not super fast, but it's a lot of work to put it together. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that sometimes it might not be that what we have on offer as far as small group learning sessions are something that the divisions want at this time.
I think, though, that it's a conversation, too, because if you do have, like, 20 or 30 or 100 docs who are interested in a certain session, and you know that from, a survey or a needs assessment or, whatever it is, and the division says, no, we don't want to do that, well, I think that it's a conversation with them about, well, but we see that there's interest here, so, maybe that's something that they want to consider when they think about what sessions they want to run. Like, if they, at the end of the day, if they say no, then they say no, but...
Yeah, I like that way. It's really true, because if they, there might be sort of division-led planning conversations where there might be a sort of no, but then from the docs you're working with that there's sort of a groundswell of interest, and to the extent possible that you could then get enough 8 to 12 doctors in a particular region to come together to do that, then absolutely we should be doing that.
Hi, this is Ranjit from Fraser. I have a question in regards to the quality improvement precept module and the team-based. So what I'm hearing is that there's two components to the quality improvement. So once the first session, then the second session will build upon what was from the outcomes of the first session. And then with the team-based care, there's 10 sessions to that. Am I hearing that correctly, first of all?
I don't want to be quoted as saying there's exactly 10 sessions, because we're actually in the stages of contracting with a partner, an education partner, to develop the sessions, but it will be a much larger series because it's building upon college's competency framework, which you may or may not be aware of, but it has a sort of set of core competencies and other things that we are going to build into small group learning sessions. So it will be more than 2 and less than 11. That's what we can say at this point, but we will have more information very soon. To Joan's question, like, we know we need to get some concrete information out there as soon as we actually have it.
So and for the quality improvement session as well, we have 2 sessions developed now, but there is content for a third, and that will also depend on the demand and any other kind of learning objectives that need to be wrapped into that, and we look forward to the feedback from the first 2 sessions in order to build that third session.
So then my question would be to that is, the attendees that attend the first component of the quality improvement, would they be the only eligible candidates to attend number 2 and 3 because they're building upon those, their actions and their component learning objectives? Or is it open to everyone each time?
It's a series. So it's a great question, and it's something we've wrestled with a lot here as we've developed the sessions. We see them ideally as building upon each other, but we don't want to, and sort of the opportunity there is that you have a cohort that works through problems together, and it creates a really rich learning experience as a cohort. But we also don't want to preclude, some doctors might get a sense that the QI, the first one, is a little too basic. They know some of those components, and they're ready to like move into the second part. And although it's not exactly the way that we've developed the content, because we have seen them as a series, we wouldn't say that you couldn't jump into the second or the third if you had a group of doctors who you felt were able to do it that way. I don't know, Mallory, if you're thinking differently, but it could be, how would you then determine that every doctor in that particular cohort is really good to like move on to the second session. I think you'd have to work with your GP champ and kind of maybe have done some needs assessment or identified some needs up front. And it's totally possible, but you'd have to be really comfortable that everybody in that cohort was, I think, up to a certain speed, and then you could jump into the 102 and then the 103.
Thank you. Hi, it's Wendy on the line. From Interior. I appreciate the discussion, and just to that idea that you just framed, could the pre-visit piece help to augment any new GPs kind of joining on in the series 2 and 3?
Yes, I love that idea. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you get a sense of, you really can sort of take a look at where they are, and yeah, good. Mm-hmm. We can add some, maybe a little bit about that into, I would say, the facilitator's guide.
I'm just writing a note that we'll add that in. That's a great idea. Thank you.
It's Erin. Would the same thing apply to the very long team-based care module? Because I could see getting GPs to commit to that 10 session being extremely difficult.
Yes, exactly. And we're going to be quite clear in the facilitator's guide and the communications around the team-based care that maybe there might be one really suggested initial session, but we certainly want that one to be very much kind of choose your own adventure. Yeah. Go to the focus that works best for you and based on your needs. Yeah.
It's along the lines of the team-based care, given that it is such a complex topic, is there any thought or option to delivering this as a series of 2 modules rather than a whole bunch of SGLSs?
No, we haven't thought about it that way. I mean, I guess in some ways it sort of seems like these are all mini modules, particularly the longer one that we're talking about, team-based care.
Except that it's a mini module that is forcing us into evening-only work rather than giving us the option of demonstrating how highly we value this enough that we set aside a combination of evening work and business hours for it, which makes the team much more able to attend. So I'm wondering, given the fact that as team-based care isn't yet for release, if there can be some consideration of 2 alternative pathways for delivery, a series of 2-hour sessions in the evenings, or an option for compressed and accelerated learning through, maybe module Part A and Part B.
Sorry. Somebody's saying something?
So I was just going to say, to build on that, sometimes MOAs, which obviously are difficult to attend in the evenings because of overtime issues and challenges. Not to mention, if we have the whole team base there, that makes for a very small group in any practice. So it would be infinite number of SGLSs in any said division which, would make it a challenge for sure. Because one whole small group could be filled up with one practice or half a practice.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I think that when and if we get to a point where that's happening, it's a good thing, because that means there's demand for the education that we're, and the QI supports that we're providing. But to the original question around, are there opportunities to think about, I guess, alternative ways to deliver the content? Sure, because we are going to be partnering with an organization to kind of figure that out. As to the evening issue, I think it depends on when the doctors need and want sessions to be delivered, and I don't want to sort of, jump into that space, I think, here. But we can explore, if there's a way that the small group learning session topics are, say, 2 to 2.5 hours, can we be creative about 3 or 4 of the competencies that might be linked being available in a sort of compressed kind of fashion? I think we have to think through how the content can be mixed and matched and work, but we will consider and work through that with the folks and you guys too, because you help us make sure the content's relevant to the doctors and to thinking about it from a delivery standpoint. So thanks, Joan. We'll think about it and figure it out together.
Thanks. And it's not that we only do modules in the daytime and SGLS in the evening. It's simply that there is more of a pattern and a variety with the modules.
Sure, yeah.
So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, this is Sophia. I appreciate that the college defines the participant number as about 10 participants. And I know in our earlier discussions around the manual, we talked about having flexibility, and that's why you've also indicated that you can have up to 20 participants. But if I remember correctly, the discussions around increasing the numbers was around because we wanted, for example, 10 GPs, but for some of the topics, it'd be really important to have the MOAs or other staff there, so that would increase the numbers. So I'm just wondering, is the intention around the 20 participants to have 20 GPs, or more around, half that GPs and half that MOAs and other staff members?
Yes, good question. We don't want to get terribly prescriptive from our end about how that 20 comes to be. We have envisioned, just as you said, that there could be, in a particular session, 10 GPs with their MOAs. That would be really awesome to sort of create that space for them to learn together. But then we thought about it in the context of team-based care, which we still very much need to explore because we don't know what teams actually look like and how that's going to roll out. But we've thought about, say, for example, if you found a clinic that was really functioning truly in a team-based care environment, and you had a nurse and you had an MOA, and you might even have like an allied health professional, say a team of up to 5, then that would mean that you would be working as you sort of pull the session together to find 2 or 3 other clinics who have a similar setup where they're bringing in their allied health professionals and their team, and you'd run that session together with them, and then work within that cap. So it's up to 20 overall because evidence shows us that that's the best way folks learn together, and also the college is wanting to make sure there's enough interactive time and just that the outcomes are actually reached and the content is covered accordingly. But we leave it to you guys to kind of figure out how you mix and match those groups to create that. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It's Candace from VCH. Is it fair to assume that this is not a new set of guidelines that's only for this fiscal year? So last year we were given guidelines and we had until March 31st, to roll out all the small group learning sessions. Is this, given the timelines and that there's still content coming, is this beyond March 31st?
Okay, great question. And we are creating a structure and a sort of format that we believe sitting here right now is going to go beyond this fiscal, but because we have to go through the budgeting process and figure that all out, we can't say for sure, but all indicators point toward us doing this continuing past, March 31st using the structure that we're laying out here.
This is Margie. I'm wondering, what is the set amount that is allocated to divisions for these small group learning sessions?
I knew that question was going to come. Okay, so technically it's $20,000 per division. The reason why we've used the ambiguous term of predetermined amount is for several reasons. Part of it is to control demand on your time, knowing that the 20K had been allotted for the entire fiscal, and we're going into the final quarter of the fiscal at this point, and even less than that. So just wanting to make sure that you guys are able to deliver the sessions and provide the in-practice supports, and it's not something that's overwhelming you when we know there's a lot of other apps and capacity issues right now. The other reason was purposeful because we want to change or kind of move away from this notion that each division feels that there's a certain amount that's theirs and they have to like grab it, and instead that you guys are working with divisions and doctors to provide educational and QI activities or QI events in partnership with them, but that you are, you know, you have to have the capacity for it and the dollars pass through the RSTs. So I know that has not having the exact amount has probably made some conversations in the field a little bit difficult, but we have done that just because we don't know exactly what the demand will be, and we want it to be actual conversations about what the docs are interested in learning both in the session and afterwards with our team, and that the dollar amount is less important.
The other thing to tack on to that too is that Jenny and Alana and I are meeting with Louise later today, and it's one of the items on our agenda to chat a little bit about sort of how we're messaging to divisions and quite, you know, what we're going to do about that 20,000 and their access to it.
It's Erin. That would be great, because when the announcement came about the freeze back in May, were the divisions not told they still had the 20,000 at that time? It's yet we were just waiting to determine the rollout and make the changes?
Yeah, they were never promised a dollar amount at all, actually, an exact dollar amount. And I mean, it might have leaked. I can't say that, like, that conversation might not have happened in other places, but PSC, we purposefully, you know, didn't say, okay, well, we're going to get it together in time and you'll still have this dollar amount, because the dollar amount itself actually has changed the original discussion since last fiscal as well. So, I mean, there's probably, I'm sure because of last year and, like, everybody knowing the 20K, that dollar amount is just out there and there are expectations around it. And we need to work with the leads, who will then work with you guys to figure out sort of how to manage those expectations.
It's Rob again here from Interior. Just a quick question about content, and you may not be able to answer this, so just let me know, but is it reasonable to say in an area that running modules that they maybe want to prioritize the small group learning session topics of QI and team-based care to be almost like a follow-on to the module ending? So if the module ends and then the group says, you know, let's really work on this content and getting teams working together and improving the quality of sort of like a fourth learning session, I guess. Is that something that's a reasonable potential priority for an area?
Yeah, I like that idea. I think it totally depends on, you know, the needs and the interests of the particular group or the cohort that you're working with, and how you'd lay that out. I mean, we know that QI can't be QI just for doing QI. So of course, if you can attach it to clinical content and changes that they're already considering making, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I will just say that that's just me personally kind of, you know, answering that question, but I think that's a lot of probably what we'll learn when you guys are out there starting to roll this out. Those are the kinds of things that will be interesting to know about, and that if they're happening that way, for sure.
I have another question, it's Margie. On the new manual, there's an invoice also for MOA. Is that still payable to the physician, or is it directly payable to the MOA? That's on page 30 of the manual.
Yeah, so MOA participants will be paid in the usual manner through their GPs. MOA peer mentors will be paid at the $30 an hour rate via a mailed check. So they'll be paid directly, but MOA participants still will be paid through their GPs.
Hi, it's Kim in the North. So just for clarity for me, if physicians, so divisions are getting the funding, and if physicians are already doing QI learning groups based on clinical, they can tap into sessional payments as well. So currently we have 4 communities that have been meeting for over a year, and they've done we're on our 3rd module, but there's never been any reimbursement for any of that. So as long as the divisions are happy with what the small group learning is and the physicians are doing what they deem important in their communities, they can tap into that?
So I just want to go, I'm trying to understand your question a little bit, because you started with a statement that the money actually doesn't belong to the division. It's used to build a small group learning session. So as we talked about, it's for the venue, for the peers who present the material, for catering and that kind of stuff, and it's actually administered and facilitated through CRSPs who set up the small group learning sessions in partnership with the GP champ or the peer mentor. So as far as the question I think you're asking is absolutely, if there's a group of doctors who have been working together on various, doing sort of education or working as a cohort, and they want to have a small group learning session, that would be able to be arranged for them, and it would come out of the 20K, or no, the predetermined amount that you're tracking on a master tracker as a region.
Okay, so so as an RSP, who do I talk to about that?
About what? Sorry.
About getting sessional payments for small group learnings that aren't part of the PSP mandated ones.
Oh, okay, sorry about that, I got it. No, as it stands right now, the sessional payments are made for making a change after attending a PSP small group learning session.
Okay, great. And so sorry, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around the money in the division. So unless physicians are approaching the divisions to tap into that because they are doing PSP module small group learning, the money doesn't actually just automatically go to the divisions. It's not just sitting there, right?
Right. It is
okay,
not.
so it's waiting for us to ask for it, and then divisions goes to PSP, and then it's dispersed from there, right?
So it's the funding sits with the SGLS funding sits with Central. So it's not part of the overall funding agreements that we have with the health authorities that fund you guys. It's a slightly different pot of money, but it still is paid out through the health authorities, like for the session to actually happen. That's paid out to the health authority, and we're invoiced for that, and so we reimburse that back. So it's not, you don't have to approach the division for money or for anything like that. When if you have a session and you're looking for sessional payment for your participants, that comes a different pot and comes through, those sessional forms come to PSP Central, so that's a slightly different one. But who is paid is dependent on the policy. So if you have physicians who are fee-for-service, they're paid at the sessional rate. But if you have doctors who are salaried or in some sort of alternate payment plan, then they're not paid for their time if it's during clinic time, but if it's on their own time, they are paid for that time.
But it's the same as modules, right?
But it is,
yeah.
It is.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is that clear? Does that make sense?
It is, thanks.
Okay, great.
It's Candace again. To confirm the MOA rates, so we have MOA participation at small group learning sessions is $20. MOA peer mentors who go out into the community with statements of work and the whole peer mentor program is $25. And MOAs who support the prep and facilitation of a small group learning is $30?
Yes. So we, this is actually, we have a revised sort of policy around this that's going to be going out. I think we're sharing it with the leads this afternoon, and then you guys will get it. But so MOA participants are $20 an hour. MOAs who are doing peer mentoring work and or involved in prep or delivery of either a small group learning session or a module will be reimbursed for $30 an hour.
So sorry, Jenny.
No, go ahead.
The reason for that is we found out recently that there was some inconsistency across the region. So in order to be consistent provincially, and recognizing that those MOAs who are providing sort of like peer mentoring and facilitation and things like that are more often sort of in an office manager type capacity, or definitely more experienced MOAs, we decided that it would make sense to bump the overall MOA peer mentor compensation to $30 across the board.
It's Emily. Is that effective immediately across the province?
I guess as soon as we get that policy out.
Yeah, as soon as I get the policy, yeah. We've got new updated sessional forms to go with it too.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
It just came to our attention actually last week when we were reviewing the manual with a smaller number of years. So we'll get the new information out there, and yeah, it'll be effective immediately. Yeah.
The MOA payment, this is Rob here again, the MOA payment consistency is great. I'm wondering, is that going to be with divisions as well? Like, will they do the same, will they use the same scale?
I have no idea.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't know what divisions do, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they would be.
It just might be a topic of discussion just to see if that's something that can be consistent, because it's the same MOAs, but just different events, different funding pots or different events, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what they reimburse their MOAs at, do you? Okay.
I think it might vary, like, out of 35 divisions, there's probably potentially 35 different funding models.
Yeah, or even across the different collaborative committees.
Yeah.
Because we know that shared care has different compensation policies than, say, specialists do, than, say, the GPSD does.
Not for MOA participants, though. MOA participants are $20 across the board.
No?
For ATC.
Okay. For participants.
For participants.
Yeah.
It's Margie again in the north. I have one problem that keeps reoccurring about physicians paying their MOAs. They just simply forget. Is there anything in the works to, in the future, maybe just have the MOAs get paid directly?
No, there isn't actually. No.
Yeah. Unfortunately it's a doctor's PC policy, I think. So it's something that we're kind of stuck with right now.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for asking me, Margie.
This is Cho from Interior. I'm just wondering why the differentiation between the MOA peer mentors in general and the MOAs involved with small group learning sessions in terms of compensation. I'm just curious because the impact of their work actually in the field is as significant as it would be with involvement in small group learning.
Yep, so it's a good question. The $20 for participating is something that's across the board that do you want to, oh, let me just, yeah, that is just a standing policy, and our bumping the 30 up to the 30 was in recognition that folks who are spending time prepping for sessions or doing one-on-one work, we see that as a little more time-intensive than sitting in a small group learning session or a module. That being said, to your point about then they take the learnings and are doing like amazing things in the practice, which we know, you know, it does seem a little, you know, that you could be like, well, why wouldn't you pay them the same? But it's just that we're recognizing more time spent sitting with somebody, teaching someone something. It's being a more active process, I guess. I don't know, were you going to add something, Christina? No. Okay.
So just to confirm, if we create a statement of work for a peer mentor who goes out into the community and supports one of their peers, it's now $30?
Okay, no, that's what I thought your question was. So I think there was a misunderstanding. There's only two different payments, $20 for MOA participants and then $30 for all MOA peer mentors. If you're helping facilitate a small group learning session or if you're doing a post-session in-practice visit, those will both be $30 per hour.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
So even if it's not related to small group learning sessions, like so if I have an MOA peer mentor that's going into a clinic to help with panel management, for example, it's $30?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
MOA peer mentors will be $30 now.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What is the cap? How many hours can a MOA peer mentor spend in a practice, or potentially in many practices?
In relation to what? I think. Okay, let me clarify something. I think there's not. I would say that there's a cap. Number of hours that they can spend. Like if that practice needs that support, then that practice needs that support. Where there is a cap, the total amount of funding available for peer mentoring to each student. So what I've talked about with the leads is that right now that's set at $10,000 per region. But we're also finding, when we set that, we also said if we get to that amount or get close to it, we can talk about funding available because there's a bigger demand. All right, guys, do you mind just putting yourself, I'm hearing some background noise.
The original amount came from basically what was spent last year.
Yeah.
On average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we're definitely talking we're tracking it, and I will actually share that back with the leads as well where they're at, and we can make additional funding available if there's a higher demand for it.
This is Deborah and Smithers. We talked about the number of positions and for maximum. What would be the minimum?
Yeah, you know what, this is a really good question because this was actually a big challenge in the North last year. I think that we went as small as 2.
Okay, great, as small as 2. And would something like complex care billing fall into the approved content? I'm sure it would. But the doctor wants to look.
So we're actually having difficulty understanding you. Maybe
it's a little bit
like tinny, sort of, yeah. Try again. Oh, I think she was talking. Oh. All right, can you hear us?
I can. I'll send you an email on it.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good.
I put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
We'll take a look at that.
Trackability. Are there any other questions in the meantime?
Hey, it's Ron from Fraser.
Hey, Ron.
A couple of questions, and I'm sorry if I missed it. I had to go off on a call for a few minutes. Are we still holding the date for December 15th, Train the Trainer, and if so, what time of day do you think?
No, you can let that date go. What was that?
Letting go December 15th? Okay, yeah. But we're still saying we're going to try to do this Train the Trainer before Christmas. So you'll throw out another date then?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we'll find another couple days.
Yeah.
It's based on the GPs we recruit and their availability.
And it will be like it's not a full day or anything. It'll be like a full-hour webinar type situation.
Yeah. Okay, one more. With respect to the already accredited module content, re-upping the module kind of stuff and doing those as SGLS, where are we at with that?
Great question. We haven't, there's no sort of immediate move on chunking the modules into small group learning sessions. We are at capacity here centrally, and we are actually having a meeting in a half hour to figure out how we might resource some of these big deliverables sitting in our work plan that we don't have capacity for. So again, related, I think, to Joan's question and maybe us providing you with a little more information in writing about what we're trying to do with the small group learning sessions in general, we can add that information in there when we have some more concrete dates or movement on it.
Gotcha. Like so the briefing note that was prepared by GPSCR for the divisions and stuff around the small group learning sessions, that's kind of out the window, that the revamped content will be available for SGLS?
Nope, it's not out of the window at all. It's definitely going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, still on the list. We just have to find time and people to do it.
But I guess like that's why the dementia care one is actually at least good, because it's you know, it's an RCI topic and related to end of life, and so I think there's some, to have at least a clinical topic is good that we'll be coming out with in January. Okay, what's the question?
What is the minimum number of physicians? So we said 2, the minimum number is 2. And then does complex care billing fall into approved content?
And, okay, I think I need a little more understanding about what you mean by complex care billing and approved content. Because in the context of the quality improvement small group learning sessions, there's nothing in there on, we're teaching quality improvement methodology and applying that to something in the practice that physicians determine they want to work on. Are you asking if they want to work on complex care billing? Is that as part of their QI project? Is that okay?
So that question is from Deb, who is having some phone issues.
Okay.
So
I think, sorry.
Okay, she's still having some tech problems, so are there any other questions? Thoughts? Concluding remarks?
I'm just wondering if you could send out the list again of approved topics thus far.
Yes, we can absolutely do that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. If there aren't any other questions, then we're just about out of time anyways. So if you do have any other feedback or any questions, as always, don't hesitate to reach out. And just to conclude, we have one more Learning Lab scheduled before the holidays, so we will have that one. I think it's December 11th, 12th, somewhere around there. No, it's the 8th. Sorry, I'm way off, because I'm on holidays after that. So it's December 8th. We'll still have one that day. We have moved them back to 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock because there were quite a few asks if we could do that. And we will start again in January. So stay tuned for new calendar invitations starting probably the second week of January. And we'll talk to you all in 2 weeks.
I just have one more question, if I may, about the MOA peer mentor. Is this going to be available for other modules as well, or just for small group learning?
The peer mentor rate is going to be applicable across the board for all MOA, peer mentor, MOA champ, module, SGLS, in-practice supports, whole shebang.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sorry, this is Jo from Interior again. When is that, I think I missed when that communication is going to be going out that we can share that change in compensation with our peers?
I'm going to send it by the leads today, and if everybody is golden, we'll send it out to you guys by tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, so much for your feedback. We're going to integrate what we talked about today and follow up with an updated manual.
Thank you.
Just a question.
Have a great day. Bye.
All right.